Hello, my dear students. How are you? I am very, very happy to see you and to say hi. I am saying hi from Tehuacan, Puebla, from my bedroom, actually, because my mom and dad are using pretty much all the space downstairs, and I still haven't found a place to work yet. So we'll be working for this class, and probably the next recording will be done also here. As I mentioned during our last session last week, I'm going to do my best to try to connect from Tijuana. I do not know if I'll be able to connect on Tuesday or Thursday, but just in case I'm not, that's why I'm recording this wonderful class for you. And if everything goes well, this class, we're going to follow the same format of the classes that we have taken and that we take every Tuesday and every Thursday. This is our International Public Relations class. And this class that you're watching right now is the class which was prepared to be given and delivered to you on Tuesday, February 23rd. Okay, as you may remember, we're going to continue talking about the theories of public opinion. Remember, we started talking about that in the last week. We didn't finish, which is perfectly fine, and it's okay. We'll have time to finish today, and if we don't have time, probably next Thursday also we will advance in watching some videos regarding the public opinion theories. Okay. So be patient today. We're going to have the same format. This presentation is going to last about 45 minutes, 50 minutes. Then you will have your 10 minutes of break, as I usually give you 10 minutes to relax, to go out, to stretch, to get your coffee, to have everything ready. And then for the second part of this class, you're going to be assigned to watch a TED Talk video, as we usually do in class. You're going to be taking your notes during this class. You're going to be taking your notes during our TED Talk video. And then at the end, you will be asked to upload the notes that you took during this class, during the video. And also you're going to be asked to share in this forum your reflections, your ideas, your thoughts, and the conclusions that you will come up with during this class. Okay, so if everything goes fine, it'll take us the 1 hour and 30 minutes, maybe 1 hour 40 minutes, as we usually do. So this should be like a normal class. So be patient with me. I'm going to start sharing our presentation. Remember, you also have the presentation in your virtual classroom, as well as the link to the video. You have your forum, you have everything. So let's begin, if that's okay with you, my dear students. Okay, so first, I'm going to make a little pause just to make sure that you have your presentation, you have everything ready. Remember, you can also pause my video at any time, okay, in case you need to make a little pause for whatever. Well, I'm recorded, so you can pause me at any time now. Okay, so public opinion theories, second part. Let's begin with a very brief review of all the first theories that we talked about in our last session. Now, do you remember we watched a video by a teacher in Latin America who actually presented these 5 theories? He mentioned that the first 3 theories usually summarize the effect that mass media has in the general public, and the last 2 have to do more with the public itself, how the public is affected, not so much on the media, but mostly focused on the people, okay? So very briefly, we're going to summarize the first 3 theories that we talked about in the last class, and today's goal, our objective, will be covering the last 2 theories, and we're going to be talking about several examples, okay? So let's summarize. The first one, which is the direct effect model, you must remember that we actually watched Orson Welles' War of the World, okay? And if you haven't checked it out yet, it's always a good time to go to the internet and maybe try to look for some videos. It's actually a very interesting phenomenon. We talked about this before. And as a summary, this theory just assumes that the public is passive, is static, and that we, the public, will accept anything, any message that will be delivered by the media. And this is a very good example because all the people, most of the people listening to the War of the Worlds actually believed that this was happening. And this is a very good example, okay? The theory number 2 we talked about in our last week has to do with the hypodermic needle theory. And this has to do with one idea. It usually has to do, if you remember well, with an idea that is injected to the to the public, to the masses. And sometimes this one idea is not intended to have an immediate effect, but it will be growing little by little, little by little. The idea will be stuck in our brains in a way that little by little is going to change our behavior, okay? Very interesting. The next one and the third one that we were talking about when we finished our class last Thursday was the agenda setting theory. And this one we were focusing on because we were saying that usually the agenda in English does not have the same meaning as agenda in Spanish, okay? Agenda usually in English has to do with what is your, I'm going to say it in Spanish, ¿cuál es tu tendencia? ¿Cuál es tu intención? Tiene que ver como con cuál es la intención de los medios de comunicación y si hay alguna intención a veces escondida. So agenda setting has to do with how the mass media is going to determine which messages, which information the rest of us are getting. And sometimes the selection of this information has to do with personal or organizational interests. Let me give you an example. And I believe Ricardo, I think he talked about this in some other classes. He talked about Fox News, for example. Fox News is usually known as a very conservative media. And usually when there have been elections in places or in countries like in the United States, or sometimes even in some countries in Europe, they take a certain tendency towards presenting the conservative parties or the conservative candidates in a more, let's say, positive way as compared to some of the liberal candidates or some of the liberal ideas, okay? Now, we're not here to say who's right or who's wrong, because that's not part of our goal in this class. But what it's important to know is that, remember, we have talked about the fact that most of the newspapers, magazines, and news channels, for example, in the United States, are owned only by a very specific group or a very specific, well, yeah, usually business people, okay? And they have their own interests. And sometimes agenda setting theory says that their interests is actually what is deciding, what they are deciding to present in the news outlet, what they decide to publish, what they decide for us, the public, to get informed about. So that means that the news we usually get in the normal, usually news outlet is usually what these people, what this group of people have selected for us to know. The rest, we cannot really find out that information. Now, remember, these theories were developed before, much before internet has, was what it is right now. And this is where I start now talking about something new, okay? We have stopped with our review, and now we're starting to expand of the theories that we talked about. I would like you right now to take a few minutes, 2-3 minutes, pause my video, please, and go look, even if it's Wikipedia, it doesn't matter. Go look for Torches of Freedom campaign and try to analyze and read how through this campaign, smoking was presented for women as an expression of liberty, an expression of freedom. Remember, in the past, women, we couldn't even vote. We have talked about this in some other classes, right? And most women were housewives. Not a lot of women were accepted in most universities or in many universities. So very smart, in a very smart way, Philip Morris, and all these tobacco companies decided to actually present cigarettes as a way for women to show their freedom, to show that they could get liberated from this control we had from men or from a society where usually women were not or didn't have the same value as men. So this is huge. As you can see here in the ad, it says believe in yourself. And usually smoking was presented as something good for your health. So take a few minutes and go look for this information, and I'll be here in a minute. Okay, if you paused my video, I hope you have already come back and you have realized that the power of media actually changes behaviors in societies and culture. That's exactly one of the most important objectives of this class. Now, towards the end of the 20th century, everything became the other way around. Now, what happened is that smoking has been presented as something horrible. Actually, it's not only a personal health issue, but it has been now presented as a public health issue, to the point that, for example, I'm going to give you an example. It is not the same for me. I usually smoke, or used to smoke once in a while. Okay, I've been trying to quit. But when I travel, you might remember 2-3 years ago when I traveled to Portugal, it was okay for me to take my pack of cigarettes and light a cigarette pretty much anywhere because everybody's smoking in Lisbon and Porto. Everybody's smoking, and not only everybody's doing it, but it's so common that it's kind of disgusting. But all the streets are full of, the colillas de cigarros all around. It's kind of disgusting, actually, if you think about it. But everybody smokes. So in my case, I wouldn't feel uncomfortable lighting up a cigarette pretty much anywhere. Even if you're walking out on the street, in most restaurants, you can smoke, etc. Now, when I travel to the United States, oh my God, I feel embarrassed about even bringing my pack of cigarettes because it is seen, it has been presented, and over the years, usually a person who smokes is not only seen as a selfish person, not only a person who does not take care of his or her personal health, but somebody selfish who is willing to affect those around him or around her. Or in my case, I'm not being a person that actually matches the beliefs. Like, I try to run, I'm training for my half marathon, I try to watch usually healthy food, I've been losing weight, this, and you smoke. It's like, you know what? This doesn't match. You're not being a person that actually acts in the way you speak. So why am I telling you all these stories, these personal stories? I know, I hope I'm not boring you with my stories, but the public opinion has changed. And what used to be seen as something hip, as something fashionable, as something glamorous women would do, nowadays you're seen actually almost like a junkie, like in many societies, but in other societies, in other cultures, it's perfectly fine. Like, smoke 2-3 packs of cigarettes, we don't care. And this is the power of media and public relations. This is exactly what I wanted you to understand. Now, let's start talking now about the group number 2, in which how usually the people are affected by all these messages that are being sent by the media, okay? And here we're gonna make also some pauses because I would like you to really take some time to take a couple of seconds and minutes to think about these 2 last theories that we'll be talking about, okay? The first one is the limited effects theory. In general, this theory says that no matter how powerful the media is, no matter how powerful the message that the media is sending to us, the opinion of people will not be affected overall. Okay, I'm going to read. The limited effects theory was proposed by Austrian-American sociologist Paul Lazarsfeld. The theory states that even if there is an effect created by the media on the thoughts and opinions of individuals, this effect is minimal at best or very limited. I would like you to stop for a second and think. What do you believe? Remember, most of these theories were created, proven, developed, usually, of course, in the 20th century. And we're talking about around the middle of the 20th century. So try to think of this when we try to analyze the theories, because as we have talked in many other situations and in many other topics of our classes, what's happening around a culture, what is happening in a society, the time that we're going through determines how the world is seen. And this theory, and I think that is wonderful that we're analyzing these theories, is because we're trying to analyze history through the eyes of these theories, okay? So I'm going to confirm again. The limited effects theory says that no matter what the media tries to create in our thoughts, opinions, or habits, the effect is minimum or very limited, okay? I hope you have written down your thoughts, because now I'm going to share mine. I know. I don't think so. That is, again, my personal opinion. And as I have told you in the past, yes, I hope you're laughing with me too. As I have told you in the past, you don't have to agree with me. Actually, I hope you don't agree with me and you actually go and research and say, well, in my case, I do agree with the limited effects theory. And I'm going to try to understand it better so I can actually confirm or deny how much I agree or not with this theory, you know. My personal opinion is, I don't think so. I don't think so. At least in the time we're living and the world we're living in, I do not believe this theory applies nowadays to our reality. My opinion, again, pause my video and go look, research, okay? Maybe you find something that I haven't found. So please share. So in general, this idea, the limited effects theory of media and the public, okay? After the introduction of this theory, researchers found that further studies could not neatly substantiate or prove that all media effects were limited. So what does this mean? That actually, once the theory was presented, and when the theory tried to be, again, replied or duplicated in certain different situations, the results were not the same. So remember, we have also talked about the fact that in the past, many of these so-called theories were affirmed or confirmed to be theories according to how back then you could prove a theory and that was it. We're becoming more and more strict in the scientific method. And now in order for a theory to be truly called a theory, it has to go through a lot of revisions, a lot of trials, and try it again and again, and in different circumstances. Is it repeatable? Are the results the same? All this has to happen now for a theory to be confirmed to be a theory. That wasn't happening at the last century, maybe towards the middle of the century. There are many actually psychological studies and many sociological studies that were confirmed as theories, but later they proved, well, this shouldn't really be called a theory, and this is what happened. Rather, the level of media influence ranged from moderate to high and varied under different conditions. I do agree with this, and I'll explain in a minute. Especially when it comes to framing opinions. Later theory do give media some level of credit. Okay. Now, what Paul Lasserfield said then is that the media didn't have the impact that we think it did have. That's what he said. Only a few people are actually open to psychological manipulation of the media. That's what he said, that only a few. And media is pretty powerless in shaping the opinion because individuals and groups are different to one another. And here I would like to pause again, because I think this is very important. When I said that I didn't share the general idea of this theory, I said it in general because of the lives and the times we're right now going through. However, Lasserfield, I believe, does have a point. What is that point? Different groups are different. Different groups have different characteristics. different individuals belonging to different groups, different societies, different cultures, they are different. Therefore, I do believe that he's right in the fact that different groups with different characteristics will be actually, their opinions will be affected at a different level by the media. That I do believe. Again, we will have to look for more modern theories that back up, this idea that I'm sharing right now with you. But I do believe that is something we can prove nowadays. I think we can prove through scientific method that different groups in different societies and different cultures with different characteristics will be, their behavior, their opinions, and their ideas will be affected in different levels, okay, depending on those characteristics. That I do believe. I do believe also that there are certain groups with certain characteristics in which the media cannot influence so much. And there are many other groups in which the media influences a lot. Think about this for a second. Take a few minutes, a few seconds, and take your notes. If necessary, if it's necessary, pause my video and take your notes and try to think of different groups. Okay? Okay, let's continue. Additionally, we're still talking about this theory, okay, the limited effect theory. Additionally, the level of media penetration in society right now and nowadays is, of course, much higher than when it was in the 1940s, in the 1950s, the 60s, and the 70s. I think this is another very important point for us to take notes of. These theories, again, were developed, created, proven in a time where variables were totally from another world, from another dimension. And I do believe that these theories help us understand the evolution of the power of media in public opinion. But of course, the new theories of public opinion should take many other things in consideration. Media is more pervasive, and other agents of socialization like religion, education, and family are weakening. This means, again, that as societies grow, as cultures grow, and as time passes by, there are many other factors affecting the opinion of people, and not necessarily has to do with the media. You know what I'm saying? And again, in this other point, I do agree with Lasserfield. Let's talk about one example. Many people who have religious beliefs in one way or another, actually these beliefs do not come from the media, but they come from the society or the culture in which they're growing, okay, the families. If in the families, this is something that is very common, and in the families, this is something that is taught to the children, to the grandchildren, etc., then the beliefs that I have, the opinions that I have, is not coming from the media, but it's coming from my agents of socialization, okay, as they are called here, which is maybe my own family, my own religion, or the same when we talk about education. Many of us, for example, we studied in private schools, we went to Catholic schools, okay, and regardless of what we believe right now, when we were children, we were affected in our opinion, in our habits, in our values and principles from this agent of socialization, which had to do with the fact of attending a private Catholic school. And even if we didn't want to, this affected our way of thinking, okay? So again, to finish with the limited effect theory, okay? Let's just say that this theory affirmed, okay, towards the end of the 20th century, that no matter what the media would do, the thoughts and opinions of individuals will not be affected by the media. And if, in case the opinions, the habits, the ideas could be affected, this effect will be limited, will be minimal. That's what he believed. Again, he believed it had to do more with the agents of socialization, how our ideas were affected, than the media. So before we move on, I would like you to take some notes about this theory, because I do believe it is powerful in many facts. I do believe it is not outdated. I'm sorry, it is outdated now with this reality that we are living nowadays. Okay? Okay. Let's go to our final theory. This is theory number 5, and it's also one of my favorites because I do believe this theory can be proven and is not updated. And I do believe it exists. And now more than ever, it will explain many phenomena happening in general in the public opinion around us. So let's talk about the 5th theory, and this is the spiral of silence theory. I think last week when this was presented to us in Spanish by the teacher in Spanish, we talked very briefly. He even said, are you one of those students who usually prefers to stay quiet and you prefer not to share your ideas or your thoughts because you don't want to be excluded from what the rest of the people believe? This is exactly the spiral of silence theory, okay? This is coming from political science. Actually, our scientist, she's a German politician, Elisabeth Noel Newman, and that's her picture, okay? She actually affirmed, and this is a theory, the theory states that a social group or society might isolate or exclude members due to the members' opinions. This stipulates that individuals have a fear of isolation. And since you have a fear of isolation, you don't want to be left, all on your own, or all by yourself. You prefer not to share your opinion, not to share your ideas or your thoughts, okay? This is something so interesting because this is actually an image of the theory and what she tries to explain. The opinions, the general opinions are expressed by the mass media, okay? So if the mass media is talking about all these ideas, about the Kardashians, or about the rover in Mars, or we're talking about why Trump lost the presidency, or whatever the media presents, okay? That's in one side. On the other side, we have interpersonal support for deviant opinion. Remember, deviant is different, okay? We think differently. We have opinions that are different to what the dominant mass media and public opinion talk about. So we think differently, but then what happens? In the middle between what most people believe and what some people do not believe, okay, and maybe these ideas are totally opposite to those dominant, okay, or handled by mass media, in the middle, the spiral says there will be an amount of people not openly expressing all these strange, weird ideas, weird, of course, from the taking as a normal idea, what is dominant, okay, in mass media. Amount of people not openly expressing deviant opinion or changing from deviant to dominant opinion. Now, this is huge, guys, because all of us, we have actually agreed with things that we deeply do not agree with just because we want to have this feeling of belonging. And that doesn't make us better or worse people than others. It makes us human. And let's explain this a little bit more, okay? Let me actually go back to this. Okay, the isolation part. It is part of our nature. It is part of our evolution to be always willing to do whatever it takes to be part of a group. Remember, we have talked about this in some other classes. It is embedded in our nature. If we do not belong to a group, we will not survive, because this is what happened thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. If you will exclude yourself, you were less likely to survive. The only way to survive in this world in which, again, I'm talking when we were hunters, when we were trying to get food from the trees, I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of years ago. It is embedded in our nature belonging to a group will guarantee your survival, whereas being excluded from the group more likely will mean you will not survive, you will die, you will not be able to reproduce, and your offspring will not survive. Again, so when we try sometimes to agree with groups, it's not only because we want to be popular. Of course, right now being popular and being accepted is something socially seen as good, but it is also part of our nature, you know? Now, take in consideration the fact that nobody wants to be unpopular or nobody wants to be la rara, you know? We'll talk about this in a very interesting way too, because now it is hip to be único y especial, right? And then at the end, all the people who are unique and special now belong to the unique and special group. So you do belong to a group. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a minute. So this theory says people's willingness to express their opinion on controversial public issues is affected by their largely unconscious perception of those opinions as being either popular or unpopular. What am I saying here? You may have your opinion about many controversial issues. Let me go ahead and I'll come back again. About homosexuality, about abortion, about gender equality, about many topics that could be seen as controversial, okay? Or even here, is God dead? Is there a God? But these are controversial topics, right? And we even make fun of these controversial topics when Christmas is coming, like, you know, those memes saying, are you the one talking in your family and bringing up all these very controversial topics about abortion, etc.? Well, usually, let me tell you about the past. And I'm going to tell you now another one of my personal stories, because maybe that helps us understand also how belonging or not belonging, or how expressing or not your opinion, sometimes it is affected by how do the rest of the people react to me either agreeing or disagreeing to this idea, okay? And again, it doesn't make you a bad person or a better person to have this willingness to be accepted. Relax. We have all been there, all of us, okay? Let me give an example. I was talking to my mom the other day, and I was actually telling her, I remember when my grandmothers, of course, they have passed away now. My mom is 75, so my grandmothers, of course, that was a very long time. I remember when I was a little kid, my grandma, both my grandmothers, they would not use the word embarazada, pregnant. They wouldn't use it. And my grandma, the one who used to live in the little town in the little village, I couldn't understand, because she will tell a story like this. Oh, my neighbor, remember Lupita? She's sick. She's sick with a baby. I would go like, what? What do you mean she's sick with a baby? Está enferma, con hijo. Está enferma con hijo. And I was like, I have no idea what this means. This is not expression. This is not a word in my world. I have no idea what this means. Later, my mom or my dad tried to explain to me that my grandma would never use the word pregnant, which in Spanish is embarazada. Because just saying the word embarazada will mean that you have no education. Eres una maleducada, eres una irrespetuosa, because you're using words that are not of a good daughter. No son de buena hija, no son de una hija de familia. You shouldn't use these words, because just using these words means that you can talk about things that are only for adults, for example, or for grown-ups. I know, it's very strange. Trust me, if it was strange to me, I can understand how strange this is to you too. And I would try to understand why. And then later, when my grandma, of course, I was already in college, and I remember asking her, Abuelita Conchita, do you remember? And we would laugh now. Do you remember when I was a little girl and that you would talk about your neighbor saying she's sick with a baby? Because you couldn't use the word pregnant, and I used the word pregnant. And I said, well, let me explain this to you. In the world in which I lived, only las personas de dudosa moral, that's how she would put it, like people with no education and with no morality, no values, they would use the word pregnant. But in a family, this will be a word that was not accepted to be used, not in a family with good values and principles. Of course, I never could understand this because for me, it's a word, it's just a word. But why am I telling you this story? Because it has to do with the fact that in this society, in this section, in this community, using this word will mean being excluded or seen as the strange person, as a person with no education, with no values, with no principles. So in an unconscious or conscious way, my grandmother's family would decide not to use the word pregnant, for example, and express with other words. Let me give you another example. When I was a little girl, you wouldn't hear the expression homosexuality, for example, even though in my family, my aunts, they had friends who were gay, but even using these words, homosexuality, gay, etc., these were not words that you will hear when I was a little girl. Ask your mom, ask your dad. Okay, this was not something common. And it's not that we didn't use the words because we wanted to be excluded, but we just didn't use the words because nobody else was using them, you know? Now that everybody can talk about gender equality, we can all talk about all these things in a more free way. I don't know, being a lesbian, being a gay, or whatever use of these words. There are still people who prefer not to use them, even if they feel excluded, because it has to do with their principles and their values, etc. I don't know. I'm giving you this example because what are the typical examples? If everybody's talking about the Kardashians and the mass media is putting and giving us that the Kardashians should be the trend topic, well, we want to be accepted by the general public, the general, the group of people that I talk to in my social media. So I will end up posting and talking about the Kardashians, either if I like it or like them at 100% or not. I'll just do it because that's what everybody's talking about here. Opinion expressed as dominant by mass media. So if this is seen as something good, it will make me popular to be also part of that conversation. And that's okay. Again, that doesn't make you a bad or a good or a better or a worse person. This is exactly what I want to emphasize. We have all been here. In this case, in the spiral of silence, the perception that one's opinion is unpopular is going to usually inhibit or discourage you expressing about it, okay? While the perception that is popular is going to have the positive effect. So when something is popular, even if it's a controversial topic, you can talk about it, okay? Because you will not be seen as somebody unpopular, okay? But let me give you an example. And I think I have talked about Glenn with you guys. Glenn was telling me, for example, that whenever he would express about former President Donald Trump, immediately, not even without sometimes listening to what he was saying, he will be labeled as, oh my God, you are pro-Trump and you're a misogynist, or you are, I don't know, racist, or you are seen like, so sometimes it was hard for him to express what he had to believe or what he had to say, because his opinion could be a little different to what the dominant mass media was talking about. That was the fact that Trump was a misogynist, that he was a racist, that he was blah, 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 blah. And we're not here to say yes or no. We're here to say sometimes expressing ideas that are different will make you unpopular. Therefore, some people will decide not to share those ideas, okay? And I think this is very interesting, okay? It attempts to describe that collective opinion formation and societal decision-making regarding issues are controversial or morally loaded. So this means also that we could have many different opinions, but if the media is presenting this idea as the dominant idea, well, we will end up sharing our opinion, or we will end up, because that will not make us unpopular. But now let's go finally, so we can start finishing and wrapping up our class today with this being unique and special. No, I think differently. I'm never going to think like everybody else. I'm always going to be unique, etc. Remember, Ricardo told us this example of, I'm going to watch películas que eran, escríbelo si quieres en el, no, pero no estamos en vivo, perdón. Documentales, o vamos a ver películas de festivales, okay? And remember, I told you that when I was in college, it was very hip to be seen as the comprabas tu pase de la Cineteca, tu pase anual, and then you will watch all these in that back in the day, all these Russian movies and all these Serbian movies and Yugoslavic movies. I don't think even Yugoslav exists anymore. And you will watch all these European movies, and you will then try to prove that you will think differently. You know, I don't watch commercial movies. I don't watch commercial cinema. I try to watch things that make me, you know, think about other things, the things that will have movies that will present a different reality. But then, and I think, Richard, you mentioned this, you end up belonging to that group too. And then you end up, I'm going to go back here, you end up expressing your idea, but then what used to make you unique and special now is what is dominant, which is being different, right? And even we have in social media, I think, some memes making fun of this, right? Like how the unique and special people, well, you're not unique anymore because we all dress alike or we all speak alike, and now we're part of this community of special and unique people. But I believe it is very interesting. It's a very interesting topic to talk about, and how, of course, media keeps affecting how we think, how we believe, how we think, what we think about different things, etc. Okay. Okay, guys, we're almost finished with today's class. What we're going to do now, okay, we're going to take your 10 minutes of a break. I'm going to ask you to pause our video, okay? Let me stop sharing for a minute. And then let me give you the instructions, guys, about what you will be doing for the second part of today's class, okay? For the second part of today's class, I'm going to ask you to watch this video. You have the video in our virtual classroom. You have here, again, the video is here. You can just type it in YouTube, look for it. And these are the instructions of what we're going to be doing in the second part of our class. You're going to watch the TED Talk video. Remember to turn on the subtitles because it should be turned on, the subtitles. Sorry about the typo. I'm so glad I found it. Okay, turn on the subtitles because the audio is not particularly very clear in this video, in this TED Talk. So make sure you have your subtitles on, okay? Take notes as you watch, okay? The name of this talk is Whoever Controls the Media, the Images, Controls the Culture. You're going to love this video. It's very interesting. You're going to upload, and this is going to be the end of the activity for today. You're going to upload a photo of your notes in our virtual classroom forum. I'll show you. We already have the forum there. Well, don't worry, you'll have it there. But you're going to add, besides the pictures of your notes, you're going to add a personal reflection, a comment, and a conclusion about the presentation that we just had. You can focus either in the 3 first theories or the last 2 that we presented today, the limited effect theory and the spiral of silence. Okay, you can share what you thought about, maybe what ideas came to your mind. And you're going to describe your general ideas and thoughts about the theories and about the video. Okay, try to share either both, maybe some lines about the class, maybe some lines about the video, okay? And what we want to do, of course, is as a summary of all these 5 theories. Again, these are 20th century theories. And that's why I like this video, because this video connects us to what's happening right now in the media, okay? Let's see if you can find that connection, all right? So again, for the second part of the class, that's what we're going to be doing. You will find then in your forum the presentation, the forum, of course, in which you're going to share your notes, and that will be your class participation grade. Now, for the next class, like a soap opera, okay? For our next episode, we'll be talking about the components of public opinion, and this has to do with how attitudes and values are shaped by the media. And in the second video that you will be watching on Thursday, most of the class, I will not be teaching most of the class because the class will be mostly focused on watching videos. We're going to watch several videos. You're going to be taking some notes, but it's like putting all these theories, all these 5 theories that we have discussed, we're going to put them now in examples, in real examples, and I'll tell you on Thursday what your activity will be then for Thursday, okay? Here you can also find some of the resources that we use for today, and I believe that is it for today's class, guys, okay? So thank you very much for being so patient. Thank you very much for listening to me, even if we're not in a live class. I hope you enjoyed the class. I hope you had time to reflect and to think about many topics that maybe you hadn't thought about, okay? And remember, right now when my video is finished, take your 10 minutes break. And when you come back for the second hour of our class, make sure to watch your video, make sure to have your notes clear, make sure to take either photos or scanning of your notes. Make sure to upload your notes before the end of the second hour of our class, and make sure to write down a paragraph with your ideas, conclusions, reflections, etc. Okay? Then I hope the whole objective of the class was achieved. Remember, we haven't finished talking about this topic. We will continue on Thursday. And even though I don't know yet if I'm going to record Thursday class today, the class is prepared, but I don't know if I'm going to upload it today or I'll be uploading the video from Tijuana. Let's see what happens. Okay, guys? Thank you very much. I will be sending you some messages through WhatsApp. And you have been very patient today. Thank you so much for your understanding. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, guys. I hope you enjoyed the class. And I hope you also liked the video as much as I did like. Okay? All right, guys. Thank you. It's been great seeing you. Bye-bye. See you on Thursday. Bye.